One of these days, we will come to you bang on 8 p.m. Apologies for the 3-minute delay. That is owing to a few transport difficulties for myself, but we are back. Welcome to another post-match review of the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. As you can tell, Aaron is still on his summer holidays. You wouldn't have thought that the football season has already begun, but Aaron will be back in due course. I believe he's back next week, in fact, for the post-Stoke City game. So you can look forward to his wonderful intros. As you can tell, I don't do any witty intros. So let's get straight on with it. We have plenty to discuss over the next hour or so. Just the usual bit of housekeeping first of all. Please do remember to like, comment and subscribe to all of our channels. You can see them situated below Sam, all the various platforms we're on. As you can see on the right hand side, there's a link to the Argyle Life shop where there are some heavily discounted items of merchandise and one or two new extra lines to be added in due course. Just a little bit of heads up of how tonight's going to go. We're obviously going to talk about QPR. There's one or two little segments that we're going to reignite and discuss in great depth. I'm sure if Mr. Ward is watching, you're about to become a celebrity once again. And then we will give a brief preview into Watford on Tuesday night. But just to let you know, there will not be a post-Watford podcast. Instead, we've got a new My Argyle Life coming out on Wednesday after Watford. So do stay tuned for that. It's one we're quite excited about. But cracking on, joining me this evening, top right, and my partner on the top of your screen. Ben, are you well?
I'm not well. I'm a little under the weather, but nevertheless very happy to be here.
Good. Well, let's start on a positive then, shall we? Bottom right is Sam Down. Sat down by the looks of it as well.
Yes, somebody who will not be named is not in a fit state to come out of his bedroom today with a hangover, so I have the kitchen to myself today. Somebody who may be watching and commenting along. Someone who you may have even just got on screen, in fact. That is. So, I have the rest of the house to myself, so I will be taking advantage of the kitchen where I can fit a seat.
Quite right. And last but not least, sporting yet another line of Argyle Life merchandise is John Allsop, bottom left. John, how's things?
Good, thank you. My voice is a bit hoarse, as you can hear from the match trade Loftus Road away end. Otherwise, good.
Instead of talking about the match trade Loftus Road away end, let's talk about the game at the match trade Loftus Road. John, take us through it.
Right, my voice will hold up. So yeah, we got off to just about the worst start you could possibly imagine. QPR had two chances, certainly one good chance before they even scored, and that was before the 3-minute mark of the game ticked onto the scoreboard. So I was standing next to Sam, and I think we both agreed that it was going to be a very long afternoon at that point, or it certainly looked like it might be. But, we got a foothold in the game. Thought we started to move the ball around with a little bit more purpose in midfield. Started to get some of our more dangerous attacking players on the ball. But QPR, still looked dangerous playing through the lines. They hit the bar. I think Karamoko Dembele it was with a shot from distance that clipped the top of the crossbar. And I think I can't remember if it was Sam or someone else around me who said the next goal is going to be really, really important here because if they score, they'll probably start to run away with it. If we score, we're right back in the game. Obviously, it was us who got the goal. A bolt from the blue from Morgan Whittaker, the sort of thunderbolt that he was scoring for fun at the beginning of last season. Hasn't necessarily scored a goal like that in a little while, but an absolutely terrific strike. I mean, it's a wasteful piece of play, ironically, but the way he snaps into that sort of tackle and has the presence of mind with very little backlift to just wallop the ball into the bottom corner. Phenomenal goal. I think quietly one of his very, very best, if not the best for us. Relief, optimism courses through the away end. We're in the game. It's a whole new game. And then, of course, about 10 seconds later, Adam Forshaw, who I'm sure we're going to talk about, decides that it will be an appropriate thing to do on a yellow card to lunge into a horrendous tackle by the corner flag. Incredibly stupid, let the team down. And we're back where we were last season at Loftus Road, down to 10 men, about halfway or so through the first half. And facing, a mountain to climb to hold on to the point. And then, we did. And I thought we were absolutely brilliant. Obviously did ride our luck at times. Conor Hazard made some superb saves in the second half, one of his very best performances for us, coming at just the right time, I guess, both for him professionally and for us as a team. But you know, I think we also, certainly in like the earlier phases of the second half, looked like we had a great intent about us. You know, we looked dangerous on the counter attack. We sort of were still pressing high. I was phenomenally impressed that Rooney made those kind of really positive, if not attacking substitutions in the sense that they were mostly like for like, at least not substitutions that were like explicitly defensive, right? Like he sort of continued to have some ambition to go on and win the game. And again, we'll talk about it, but we very certainly factually very, very nearly had an opportunity to win the game right at the end when the referee, who I don't think we'll talk about him probably in the rest of the pod, had his whistle in his lips to give a penalty for the foul on Such and did not.
I can assure you we will be talking about the referee, don't you worry.
You must be gavin a laugh. Hey. Anyway, so that happened. And then drama still wasn't over. Freddie Asaka, of course, sent off late on for one that in real time I thought looked very, very harsh. Watching it back, I think you can see it both ways. Again, I'm sure we'll get onto the decision making. But yeah, and then had a good few more minutes to hold out, you know, to hold out for the point. And we got it, and it was absolutely you know, no less than we deserved. I thought we were so, you know, resolute, so gritty, so gutsy after going down to 10 men, but with some quality as well. And so in the course of 90 minutes, roller coaster of emotions all the way through. It went from at the very beginning thinking we're in for a very long season to thinking at the end, maybe we're not that bad.
Sam, before we get into the nitty gritty of the moments that took place in the game, anything you wanted to add on John's summary there of yesterday's game?
Yeah, I think it was.
Just quickly, I'd like to ask Sam, after some comments he made in a group chat last night, if he still thinks that QPR's performance was worthy of Xavi and Iniesta level Barcelona, or if he's calmed down a little bit on how good they were.
No, I think it makes our performance all the more impressive that we did that. I think at a team who, in my opinion, will absolutely be up at the top end when all said and done. Certainly, given they were missing two of their best players yesterday, I thought QPR had some excellent patterns of play. That they battled in well, and it makes it all the more impressive that we really took the game to them, given just how good they were. In all honesty, but yeah, I think there's a lot to be positive about from our point of view. We were first 10 was absolutely shocking. Unfortunately, we absolutely got battered there. They had two very good chances to go a goal up, and then they did go a goal up following the corner out of the second chance, and we thought it was going to be an absolute annihilation. In the sort of minute 15 to 25 or so, we really dug our way back into it. Still didn't create anything, what I would call a clear opening, but we're really digging our way more into it, and we were getting closer to the positions to create the openings without a doubt. But then it turns out that when you've got Morgan Whittaker on his best form, who needs clear openings, because he's the ultimate XG buster, as it were, that he'll just ping in a shot from goodness knows how many yards, and it, you know, when he's on song, it can go in. So the bit of Morgan Whittaker magic leveled it for us. At that point, we had the momentum with us, going very positively, and then the complete idiocy of Adam Forshaw getting that second yellow. And then I think in the second half, we battled really well, the 10 men of Argyle against the 11 men of QPR and the 9 men of Argyle for the last 3 minutes or so. Yes, QPR have more chances than us. Of course they did. They're at home. They're a better side on paper, and they had 10 men. But the fact that we had so many moments where we did break forward dangerously, did have some electric counter-attacks, and really, really close to getting awarded a penalty. You know, like I say, he had his whistle with his lips and he hesitated. So whether you think it was a penalty or not, I think he was certainly within a millisecond of blowing that whistle before he hesitated. Yeah, really could have won the game. QPR will obviously feel they could have won the game as well, because Hazard made a string of very good saves. But yeah, the fact that we took that to them, really positive. I think the whole game gave me more reason to be positive than the Sheffield Wednesday game, but that was caveated with some bits about, well, you know, if we can't beat Hull at home, who are we going to beat? But you know, yesterday's game gave me a lot more reason to be positive. Not enough to totally override all the other stuff, but much more so than anything I'd seen before. I think in terms of reasons to be positive, a brave performance, a fighting performance, one that showed some really good counter-attacks and some really good defensive ability, as well as probably our goalkeeper's best ever performance he's had for the club. So yeah, very, very happy with that. Happy to come away with a point.
Not bad to have played the league winners on the opening day then, and the second automatic promoted side on match day 3, eh, John? It's been a rough start for us,
context,
isn't it?
I had QPR 4th and Sheffield Wednesday 11th in my predictions, just for a bit of added context there.
There you go. Who'd have thought that comment knocked me for 6? I think it's fair to say.
Sam Down so confident in Sheffield Wednesday, he's actually given them 1 twice there. That's how good they are.
Ben, why don't you talk us through the opening goal of the game then? Frey's header just 2 minutes in. To be fair to Queen's Park Rangers, there was no hanging about on Sky, was there? They came at us like a steam train early on and put us to the sword early doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I tweeted just before the goal went in, because I was on slight delay watching on Sky, that Connor Hazard already made a very excellent save. He'd come off his line very well and made a very quick reaction save already. So, yeah, as has been said, we were poor and they were great for that first 10 minutes, and the combination wasn't good. I'm not entirely sure where the blame lies for the goal. It looks like Gibson loses his man. Edwards is perhaps not aware of what's going on around him. And I've seen a little bit of blame attached to Hazard, but I kind of feel like Hazard's the least should take the least blame in that scenario, because he's either got to commit to going to the near post for the flick on, or he's got to stay where he is, anticipating the flick on coming across his 6-yard box. So I don't really blame Hazard there. I feel like that was just maybe caught in the headlights a little bit. The comment on there says no man on the front post. It looked to me like Edwards might have been tasked with that area of the box. But Gibson and Edwards, I think, redeemed themselves more than enough during the rest of the game if they were at fault for that goal. I really do think it was a case of we maybe had a game plan. We were sort of taking a deep breath, and then it all, very quickly fell apart before we could get our foothold in the game. And yeah, it was a well executed. It was a great, very, very vicious corner. And the not much chance for the keeper. I feel we could have done better defensively. These things happen, I think, sometimes. I think the response was more to be focused on than the concession, to be honest. And I think that's sort of like, just to go slightly tangential, the one of the most encouraging things on another day, Hazard doesn't have the game he has. No, that Whittaker Thunderbolt doesn't go in and we lose 1-0 or we lose 3-0 or something, and we would still be pleased with a battling result. But the fact that I criticised Rooney after the Wednesday game that there was no response in game. There was no sort of learning from the patterns of play, and as John said, he reacted in game, I think, quite well. I think as opposed to Hull, when the substitutions kind of killed the momentum, I feel like that didn't happen at all. I feel like it added something to the team, to the performance. I think that went really well, and more than that, the selection. I think his willingness to change the selection first for Hull and then again to on Saturday mixing things up shows a willingness to adapt and be flexible, which perhaps wasn't evident in his time in Birmingham, and has been a complaint in his previous spells too. So that bodes really well. Although it's one game, just as we shouldn't get carried away with the Wednesday game, we shouldn't be getting carried away with this one. Foster had some great results, didn't he, at the start of his tenure. It nevertheless was very encouraging, and Wayne Rooney and the coaches deserve a lot of praise for Wednesday looking like nobody knew what they were doing, to yesterday, as John said, that everybody, or was it Sam? I apologize. Everyone looked like they knew what they were doing. It was cohesive. It was well connected, and that's down to the coaching. That's not just down to the players. That's down to what's been done on the training pitch. So I think that the coaches deserve enormous credit for that. You could see what the system is trying to do. We still have square pegs in round holes, and if we don't get the players in before the end of the window, then we might have to, I suggest we might need to adapt the system. The manager might have to look at adapting the system to get the best out of the players he's got. But if he can get the players in, he can stay with this system, and it looks like he's got a good thing going. I think that's really encouraging in the sort of the meta view of this game. The performances have got better and better over the first 3 games, and that's much better than trending the other way. But yeah, I mean that's why I think the first goal, the game could have gone so differently anyway, with the events of it, that I'm not too not going to be too worried about that one. On the balance of play over the whole 90 minutes, we defended a lot better. There were a lot, many more moments of good defending than poor defending. So, yeah, I think I'll give whoever we want to assign the blame to there a pass for that one.
For sure. And then, as the boys mentioned in their review, we started to grow into the game. We started to wrestle control of the game, and then literally in stepped Morgan Whittaker to do a very Morgan Whittaker thing, a quite fabulous 1-2 with a QPR midfielder. And then I'm not quite sure which one of you three wants to take this. Absolutely no right whatsoever to then bury that 30 yards into the bottom corner. It is just utterly sublime, isn't it? Selfishly, I wish he'd done it a week later when the transfer window had expired. But if anyone ever needed to see another example of Morgan Whittaker's quality, there it was on full show, wasn't it?
I'll let the lads.
It might be the best goal he's ever scored. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I'll let you guys to talk about it properly because you were there and you could experiencing it live is different when you're actually there. But it literally got me off the sofa. I was watching at home with the kids and I literally leapt off the sofa because it was so unexpected. It looked like he was just going to challenge for the ball and it was going to sort of spin up into the air or something. And the next minute it was nestling in the back of the net. It was just an absolute, there's not many. I'm a boring old man. There's not many goals that literally get me off.
We know what happens. We know what happens when Argyle players go to challenge with the ball. Gavin Ward usually reaches to his pocket, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. Sam, he did challenge for the ball, but he also hit it from 30 yards out.
I think it might be the best goal he scored for us, and I know that that's a statement that's probably quite controversial when he scored so many absolutely brilliant ones, but it's just the fact that he hits it first time, and it's just he's challenging for the ball as he's hitting it. Like normally, he has scored some very good goals, but normally he scores them after he's already got them under his control. The fact that he just planted his foot through that one and connected so sweetly as he's still trying to shrug off the defender, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that's right up there with all the absolutely fantastic goals over the past few years. I'm not going to say it's the best of all time because that Carey at Blackpool one will probably always be the best of all time. But I'm genuinely going to say probably top 5 or 10 Argyle goals I've ever seen. It was that good, and the memory of it, just seeing, hang on a minute, he's going for this, and then it going in will be a memory that will stay for a long time. And I think that iconic yellow third kit, which just to very quickly touch on without going on too much of a tangent, I think makes it more memorable. That kit is such a striking, like almost like I can only describe it like a zesty sort of lemon color of yellow. It's that really bright yellow. Sort of inspired by the Jamaican national team kit, and I think Plymouth might have a few sort of Rastafarian converts after that because it was such a nice kit and a very memorable moment in it. But yeah, and we'll see if John has anything else to say about Whittaker or the kit, even that I've diverted it onto.
No, I said my piece about it mostly. I think it's the presence of mind to make the snap decision to like hit that when again the ball's not under his control. He's got little backlift. It's a phenomenal strike. I've said about some of his previous goals from distance. I don't know if people have played like more recent versions of FIFA. I think maybe the one from I don't know. I've not played the more recent one, but whatever. The most recent one I've played on, there's sort of a function where the player gets the ball in a good shooting position. They sort of size up the shot and it like slow motions it down and like zooms in. It's really annoying. But you could almost actually see Morgan Whittaker doing that like last season. Sometimes he would like find that yard of space inside off the right channel. You could see the defenders in real time like break themselves basically, and suddenly he's like almost like
Ipswich away springs to mind immediately.
Yeah, Sunderland as well at home. And he winds one up. And those are brilliant goals. But again, it's because he's got that time to set himself, to find that little bit of broken field. And I think this one was a completely different type of long range goal. And I think all the better for it. That again, just the sort of presence of mind to be able to do that first time is phenomenally impressive. It's a wonderful strike.
So we get ourselves back in the game, 1-1. We have total control of the game, I would say, at this point. QPR had lost their early zip. We'd wrestled it back. We were knocking it around before the goal. You sensed there was a moment coming for Argyle. Certainly I did watching the game. Game kicks off. You're thinking, right, keep your heads, lads. Knock it around for 5 minutes. Let's build up that tempo again. And in steps quite frankly, in my opinion, one of the biggest head loss moments I think I've ever seen a Plymouth Argyle player have. Not only do you pick up a what they would call now a professional yellow. You always see the commentators saying, "Oh, it's a good yellow for the team" and things like that. No, it's not. No yellow card is a good yellow to pick up. And he had about 3 or 4 attempts at bringing down the QPR player and couldn't quite drag him back, which Gavin Ward then let play proceed for another 40 seconds before booking him. And then just 5 minutes later, Adam Forshaw, when I think is it Jimmy Dunn running down that right-hand side? He's no more than 3-4 yards away from the corner flag. He's going nowhere. He's either running the ball out of play for a throw-in or it's going to be a corner, not the end of the world. I know they've already scored from one. And, I mean, who wants to take the tackle that Forshaw lunges in with? Because this is a guy who's played 300 professional games, mostly in the Premier League and in the Championship. It is incredibly unprofessional, isn't it?
It's not only unprofessional, but he has, it's not a rush of blood moment. He's tracking him back towards the corner. It's not like he's sort of come across the pitch and just mistimed something. He's literally shepherding him to the corner and then just decides to swipe for some reason. I mean, I just wanted to make a quick point. I'll let the lads sort of talk about it because they were there and probably, I imagine there was a lot of head loss in the away end. But like the professional foul, I can kind of understand why he's done it, because last week against Hull, Rooney specifically said he could have done that, picked up the yellow and stopped the fella travelling sort of 50 yards up the pitch, playing the 1-2 and bending it in the corner. So I imagine that was on maybe in the back of his mind, thinking, I don't want to be at fault again for a breakaway. That is the only, for his whole performance, which I thought was pretty darn poor, that's the only concession I will give him. And yeah, like I say, that it wasn't a situation where he'd already shepherded him. He'd already done the hard work. There should have been absolutely no need for him to make that challenge. I'll let the lads describe what it was like in the away end.
Well,
yeah, do it very PC, lads, please.
Yeah, no, I think me and John just looked at each other and both almost sort of in tandem said he's gone, didn't we? And sure enough, 2 seconds later he was. Yeah, very, very frustrating. Rooney looked like he didn't trust himself to speak really as Forshaw walked off, and I don't really blame him. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I've always said I don't like digging in too much because I know that, there is always a chance that players could see this. But I thought, if I'm being honest, I have to be honest as well and give my truthful opinion. But I thought he had a really dreadful game even before the sending off. I really do. His legs looked about a yard off it at all times. He got skinned so many times. When he got the ball, I think he gave it away a good 2 or 3 times when there were simple passes on. He just was not on it from minute one. It was a really, really dire performance, and I think he'll know that as much as anyone. But yeah, I think his legs are really, really going. There is a question, maybe it's like a 20-minute at the end player. Could he come on and see the game out a bit? I think possibly, but I think unfortunately he's been the weakest player to have started regularly so far this season. And I'm hopeful there's going to be at least one more coming in terms of a central midfielder and hopefully an attacking midfielder as well, which can give a little bit of leeway. But if there is nobody else comes in, I think it has to be for the Stoke game, Houghton and Randall in CM with probably JB in the advanced role, because I think he's unfortunately not proving to be a player capable of starting at championship level at all.
John,
yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I'd regretfully agree with most of that. I don't think the issue is that his head went or that his legs are gone per se. I think the issue is that there seems to be a lag between his head and his legs that he hasn't adapted to yet, and that's the big problem. Look, he looked off the pace yesterday, and he has a few times this season, where he seems to think, I'm going to press really high and then I'm going to be able to get back, or, I'm going to press high and I'm going to be able to intercept the ball. And a couple of times he has. I remember a couple against Hull where he did that really well. But a couple of times he just gets bypassed and suddenly the other team are away. And I think with this tackle, it wasn't head loss in the sense that he's, it's a rush of blood to the head and he's dived in and then he's gone, oh, what have I done? I obviously can't speak for him and I'm not inside his head, but my assumption, given his vast experience and how good he is, would be that he's just thought it's not a risky tackle. It's not risky. I'm good enough. I'm going to get there. And he didn't. So, like, I think there's, I think it's someone whose legs are not where they once were because of a succession of injuries that he's had and getting a bit older. And I think the very best players can mitigate that by changing their game a little bit, by changing their positioning a little bit, by not, for instance, doing things like that second yellow card tackle, not lunging in when you're not quite sure if you're going to get there or not. He seems like the player who has the confidence of a Premier League player and the legs of a lower end Championship player, and he hasn't quite wired the difference between those two things. Now, I think he's a phenomenally good player, and I want to say it can sound very disrespectful to say his legs have gone. All players who have injury issues, it's going to affect them. It's not meant to be disrespectful, and I think he is an intelligent enough player that he will be able to get his head around that at some point. But it just looks like maybe we're in a phase of his career where he's not quite. He's just, there is sort of a disconnect there. That looked like the tackle of a player who knew he was able to make that tackle and probably would have done 2 or 3 years ago, but just now, the other player was a touch quicker than him. And he's kicked him, and obviously he's going to have to go for that. I'd agree with Sam that I don't think he should be starting, but I think that's also because the playing two in midfield kind of system that we're doing at the moment seems to be quite reliant on those two players being incredibly energetic and dynamic. And I don't think it's an accident really that obviously when teams go down to 10 men, it's a very old football cliche that it's not necessarily as easy to play against as you would think, and it changes the kind of structure of the game. But I don't think it's any accident that us getting control of that game, in my opinion, really happened after the red card to the most extent, at least in phases. And I think that was because we had two young midfielders in there who were dynamic and energetic and were able to do the job better than Forshaw was able to do it in the time he was on the pitch. So I'm hoping that we can kind of learn from that and obviously not start Forshaw while he's suspended, but also not start him, after that, and instead use him as a player who can come on and who can use his experience kind of late in games, either to get us on the front foot or to sit in and kind of hold things. I remember, I think it was the QPR home game at the back end of last season. He came on and I thought he really made the difference in that game, in terms of like setting the tempo of it. Like he is capable of doing that. I really don't want to sort of sound like I'm writing him off for, that I think he's totally past it or not good enough to play for us. He is a phenomenally skillful player, but like I said earlier, I just think that he's clearly not the player he once was, and I think he needs to realize that and know that you can't, be making challenges like that you can't necessarily be herring around the pitch and expecting to be able to then get back and plug holes as well as someone can do when they're, 21, 22, and they've got those younger legs. I think it's about how we use him, how he uses himself. And I trust us to get that right. I do. But I think him starting in this system has not worked so far this season on the whole. And certainly, obviously, did not work on Saturday and could have cost us enormously. And it's kudos to the other players on the pitch that it didn't.
I think for the balance of debate, we should obviously just highlight that this isn't, although it's Forshaw bashing on this occasion, we have been very we've praised Forshaw where necessary, and we are happy on the podcast to praise players immensely, as Morgan Whittaker I'm sure knows. And we're also we also have to see as it is, and unfortunately it was a real lack of professionalism by somebody who's played 300 games, but with 300 games under his belt, he'll know better. He'll know that he was rash with the second challenge and shouldn't have done it. And he will learn from that, you would hope, as will the rest of the team. So very quickly then, I want 2-minute answers here because we are rattling through the QPR segment before we come to questions and the Watford preview. We do have one small little talking point still to come to, but 2-minute answers, please. We've just given our thoughts on the Forshaw thing. Let's have a bit of positivity for 6 minutes, 2 minutes each. One player each from that performance. You're not allowed Morgan Whittaker because of his strike. Just one player you want to pick out who epitomised the grittiness and determination that got us over the line. And if you say Connor Hazard, then it's -5 points in the prediction league for you. Ben, you first.
I'd like to say Darko JB just because I feel he gets an inordinately disproportionate amount of stick. He didn't set the world on, and I also think someone else will hopefully pick Joe Edwards, who deserves it would be my natural pick. But he didn't set the world on alight, but he struggled in a team that was incredibly restrictive last year under Foster. He didn't sort of get to range the way I think suits his game. And he had this problem with the stitches. And I think, when you've got deep injury to tissue, etc. It's not just a case of being able to come back and run at full pelt. I do think he's been he's had to step into the breach. Really, we've had injuries, etc. And he stepped into midfield and played maybe not to his full capacity, and certainly maybe not to the highest standard that we would have liked to have seen the last couple of games before Saturday. But I genuinely think he's sort of going to come back to form and fitness and play a bit important role. He's flexible enough to play in both positions. I think yesterday when Forshaw went off and he dropped back into midfield, that dynamism more than made up for maybe some of the slight delay in the cognitive, in the thinking, in the execution of getting out. I think we looked more solid with 10 men than we did with 11 when JB dropped back into that role. And I thought he was doing pretty well once we'd got control of the game to sort of get himself about and sort of help with the press quite well. So I think Darko JB probably went under the radar because of his, he was neither... We weren't on the front foot, were we, for very long in the game. We didn't create any other chances apart from the Whittaker goal, really. So he sort of flew under the radar in that way. And then defensively, he wasn't sort of bodies on the line, heads in the way like some of the others were. And obviously, the back four and the goalkeeper take the most plaudits for that. But he did a really good job just patrolling, getting around, harrying people. Yes, there were a few breaks, but we were a man down. There were going to be spaces to exploit. And I feel like he needs a bit of... I think folks need to sort of detach him from the system we played. Who really stood out? Even Morgan Whittaker looked stymied under the system last year. Under Foster, he sort of isolated out on the right, unable to come in, etc. So I feel like JB should get some credit for yesterday, and I feel like he's gonna, if people get behind him, he could be a real benefit boon this season.
I think you've got Gavin Ward's timekeeper because that was longer than 2 minutes. Gazza, just seen your comment. Connor Hazard should be given credit. One of the lads can give it. I was just trying to fob them off for getting an easy answer out there. I wanted them to work a little bit on tonight's podcast. But if either of you two want to throw Hazard into the mix, feel free, because it is right that we praise him.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Hazard just because I think the danger is with all this stuff, kind of like at the tail end of last season when we had the each nominate our best home game. The danger is that everyone sort of nominates like a bit of a different one, and the obvious ones get missed. So I'm going to go for Hazard on that same basis. I think that was the best game he's had for Argyle. He has had some other very good games, like Hull away last season, probably being the main one. And actually, funnily enough, QPR at Loftus Road last season as well would certainly be another. But I think that was his best. I think his distribution, his pass selection was a lot better. I think he realises he's not a Cooper and doesn't try to be a Cooper. He will go short a bit more often just because that's what he's more likely to keep the ball flowing. But on the couple of occasions he did go long, it went better than normal. I know he shanked one out literally right at the end in stoppage time, but at that point the emphasis was just on getting the ball up the pitch and away. The emphasis wasn't at that point on playing out. Certainly when we went down to 9, it was defence first only, and probably rightly so. So I think Hazard's distribution was better, but some of the saves were absolutely fantastic. I want to highlight the one-on-one first of all. I know it led to a corner that they scored from, so ultimately not of that much consequence, but fantastic saves. Used his legs well, used his body well, and got down to his left-hand side to get enough on it to tip it around the post, whereas I think it would have been going in. The volley that went over the players just at the start of the double save, the volley from whichever player it was, I can't remember, but the one which sort of loops over players. Cook, that's who it was. Cook's volley that loops over players, and then he has to get and palm it away. You kind of think that it's an relatively easy save, and then you watch back in the highlights, see it really isn't, because how quickly the ball's going, it's zipping along. The time from contact to save is, even though it's relatively longer distance, it's not a long time at all. So he did so well to respond to that. And then, of course, there's the other part of the double save where he gets down and just sort of palms it away with one hand. My very controversial opinion, and this is not to denigrate him, is that the first part of the double save is actually better of the two. Because I think the second part, he's almost forced into using one hand because he maybe doesn't quite get his feet across his line quickly enough. I feel, having watched it back, if he maybe gets his feet across the line a bit more, he could get two hands, possibly even could catch it. But the first part of the save is absolutely magnificent, and yeah, better distribution, two excellent saves, plus the follow up to the first excellent save as part of the double save. Full credit to Hazard, excellent performance, and deservedly man of the match. The only thing he dropped all day was his trophy as it was given to him, and I can't stop watching that back. And Whittaker's reaction is just hilarious. But yeah, really good performance all around from Hazard.
And I think it should be mentioned as well. Sorry, just that with Hazard, we've just brought a new keeper in. So mentally, to go out there with the Stones, to be under pressure, to go out and do that, he deserves awesome credit given the context of that performance.
What was he doing going out on the pitch with Stones? You're not even allowed to have a bottle cap in the stand, for Christ's sake. John?
Well, I take Stones. He would, I think he'd go well with Gibson at the back. Yeah, Hazard would be my man of the match. I just want to echo that so that the commenter doesn't think we're not giving him his due. Close to a perfect goalkeeping performance. Excellent stuff. I was critical of him for his slowness of distribution last week. Ironically, that ended up being a huge asset yesterday because you want to slow the game down when you've got 10 men. But no, he's brilliant shot stopping. The player I'll highlight is Joe Edwards. I think he was highlighted either by me or someone else last week as well, but I thought he was absolutely phenomenal once again. Don't think I need to say a lot more because, it's the same things as was said last week. A guy who just his passion and his grit and his determination to just work harder than everyone else, win every ball, consistently, belies the idea that he is maybe not good enough for this league, or maybe should only be a bit part player for us. For me, I think at the moment, fitness depending, he's close to the first name on the team sheet. And I think the fact that he was absent at Hillsborough and present for the subsequent two games and the golf in performance standard, between those, obviously you can't always just distribute that to one player. There are a number of factors at work, but I think he is part of it. I think he symbolizes the heart and soul of this team. And I'd be really, really disappointed to see him drop back to the bench. I think that shirt is his for now, and he's earned it. And yesterday was, another excellent example of why he was, he embodied everything that was good about our kind of resistance after going down to 10 men, and superb stuff.
I think I said after the Cheltenham game that if anything was proven to me, although it was mid-table League Two opposition, that Mumba and Edwards, whilst fitness is on their side, that those shirts belong to them for the rest of the season, and I've seen nothing in the last two games to tell me otherwise. We are 38 minutes in now, 886 of you joining live. We hope to let that number rise as the next half hour or so goes, and we're just going to take a look at one of the comments I've starred already after we've given praise to three players. Paul Burke says, who else is excited for Ref Watch? Well, here we go. Strap yourself in. If you're Mr. Gavin Ward, I'd get behind the sofa if I were you. Now, look, I'm going to caveat this by saying, before we get underway, that everyone knows my opinions of Mr. Gavin Ward. There's nothing to hide behind. I'm not his biggest fan. I think there are far better referees in the Championship out there than him. The big decisions in the game, Forshaw's red card, I don't think anybody can have any complaints whatsoever on the two yellow cards. No arguments. Forshaw had to go. Everything else in the game, between the first yellow card being given and the penalty shout at the end that we'll come on to in a second, everything else really alarmed me. Because at no point did I see any sort of fairness in the free kicks that were being given one way and not being given in the other way. Equally so, on top of that, the yellow cards that were going one way that weren't then being replicated on the other side of the pitch. Now, I will never forgive Gavin Ward for the way he lost control of the Rotherham game at home last year. We had two strikers hospitalised because he lost control of that game after Ryan Hardy's head injury. Before that, let's not forget, Gavin Ward refereed us 3 times last year. There was Preston away, where their second goal is offside and not anywhere near enough is made of the fact that the centre forward is stood in front of Hazard as the ball passes in front of him. He then took charge of Ipswich away, where George Edmondson should have been sent off. And that's a totally different game against a team that are now playing in the Premier League. His third game was Rotherham. 3 times in the first half of the season last year. 3 massive decisions. Now, okay, we went on to win the Rotherham game and Daniel Ayala decided to play handball on the halfway line. However, that yesterday, the whole control of the game and the decision making was atrocious from him. There's got to be a totting up procedure that goes on, because if you commit 11 fouls each, one team gets 5 yellow cards or 4 yellow cards, whatever it is, and the other team haven't had a player booked by that point. What does that tell you? I mean, you can't have 11 fouls and not get anybody booked. So then we come on to the penalty shout in the second half, and this is where I'll allow John and Sam to step in, one of you at least. My personal opinion is, on the penalty, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I've seen them given. Such is not in a position to win that ball because he is being pulled around by Clark Salter. And I'm going to say it, if that's at the other end of the pitch, that penalty is given. Discuss, one of you.
Yep. Well, I don't know about. I don't. Yeah. I think my reaction in the ground was that it was a penalty. Seeing it back, there's one angle where it really, really looks like a penalty, and another angle where it looks a little bit more ambiguous. I personally think it is. I do agree that there's a bit of a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but as Sam would famously say, it's like a 50-50 where one of the 50s is weighted more in our favour. So I think that probably makes it a penalty. But the concerning thing for me is less like whether it actually is a penalty or not than the fact he had his whistle in his mouth, was literally in the process of blowing it, and then you could see him literally from the stand in real time, look over to his assistant who's not giving it, and panic and decide to not give it. It's an astonishing lack of confidence and authority in your own what you've seen with your own eyes as a referee. Now, if he gives it and then he goes over to the assistant and the assistant says, "No, I strongly don't believe this is a penalty. I think you're going to have to overturn this. I've seen, a shirt pull that you haven't seen." Then maybe you could argue that that's fair enough. Although I think we'd be hard done by. I think to use the clear and obvious error standard, if that penalty is given in a stadium in the Premier League, I don't think VAR in its proper functioning overturns it. But at least you would then have a discussion with the assistant referee after the fact. The fact he hasn't even given him the time and space to kind of do that and make sure he's got the decision right, and is instead just panicked and run away, is pathetic. And yeah, he was a disgrace yesterday. And I think we are critical with referees quite often on this podcast. I'm sure we're absolutely as guilty as every other fan base of seeing the game through green tinted or tractor tinted spectacles or whatever you may have in the spectacle department. But he is something else. That is now the 3rd game in a row that he's officiated us where he has been terrible, not just bad, not just inconsistent, terrible. And I would actually argue, and again, it's kind of ironic because he got the big decisions in the game, bar the penalty, arguably correct. But everything else was so wrong that I actually think that performance was worse on the whole than the Ipswich one and the Rotherham one. It was from start to finish a masterclass in how not to referee a championship game. And I will be furious if I see him refereeing another one of our games between now and the end of the season. He should be taken off.
Very quickly, before Sam jumps in to give his tuppence worth on the penalty, I would say the correct course of action for Gavin Ward should have been to award the penalty. If he feels on first look that's a penalty, he should give it. Then, if the linesman feels so strongly,
he's literally the referee. It's his job.
If the linesman then feels, all right, Roy Keane, back in your box. If the linesman then feels that he's made a mistake and can offer advice, by all means, go and have a chat. But at least show people that you have taken advice from your linesman. We only found out, let's be fair, we wouldn't be talking about this penalty the way we are if Rooney hadn't told Sky what he was led to believe. It's Rooney is the one who's told us he believes the referee's going to give that penalty. Now, if we didn't know that, if nobody knew that in the
No,
ground,
his whistle was in his mouth. You could see it from the stand. His whistle was literally in his mouth. He was about to blow for it. He doesn't. It's not Rooney's word or not is irrelevant here. It was very, very visible that he was going to give it.
just to clarify Dan Underwood's question, is it true he lives in Exeter? No, it's not true. He doesn't live in Exeter, as far as I'm concerned. He's actually part of Surrey FA, I believe. If you type Gavin Ward into all the into Google, it will come up that he represents Surrey. I'm fairly sure that's the case. Sam, why don't you give us your little bit on the penalty?
Yeah, viewing the ground, I was absolutely going ballistic, waving my arms about, screaming for a penalty. Seeing it again, is Clark Salter holding Such to the point where his movement is impeded? Yes. But Such is also holding Clark Salter to the point where his movement is possibly impeded. I think if neither of them are holding each other, then I think Such probably just gets ahead and probably at least makes some contact with the ball. And then who knows whether the keeper saves it or not. But obviously, given the fact they're both holding each other, neither of them get to the ball. I honestly wonder if we maybe need to give a little bit of criticism to Such, because if he'd have just kept his hands to himself and he had both hands clearly in the air, and it was clear for all the world that Clark Salter was holding him, that would have made the decision easier for the officiating team. So I think we possibly have to be a little bit critical of our own guy on his debut there, if we're being honest. But it is disappointing to see the process. Like, to see his whistle in his mouth and hesitate. Look, assistant referees are there to assist. They're not there to overrule. Unless it's an exceptional circumstance where the ref has just not seen something like that. That incident at Home Park a few years ago when Jeffcott scored against Cambridge. And obviously the referee had not seen that Hardy made a flick on from an offside position. That instance I can kind of understand, even though it did cause absolute mayhem in Home Park at the time. But something like that, I think you kind of should go with your first instinct, but I also think his first instinct was wrong. So I think the right outcome has been reached in terms of not giving a penalty, but it was reached by the wrong process. The other two big decisions, we've not really spoken about the Osaka red yet. Again, in the ground.
Into it,
I
didn't. Come into it.
Okay. Well, I'll hold off on that. But yeah, the foreshore 2 yellows, correct in my eyes. The penalty decision, goodness knows how they got to the decision, but I do think they found the correct outcome. Yeah, everything else appalling. Everything else really dreadful game management, double standard on free kicks, double standard on yellow cards. Just shocking, and then let tensions bubble over, let a little bit of afters off the ball in a couple of instances look like bubbling over. It was just a very, if you kind of have a textbook example, if you're explaining football cliches to uninitiated football fans, and the cliche you're trying to explain is the referee lost control of this game, that would be that one, and the Rotherham one. Funny enough, those would be two perfect games to show.
You saw moments where. Just quickly, John, you saw moments where Joe Edwards was aghast at free kicks not going his way and holding his arms out, throwing his arms around. Adam Randall throwing the ball down into the ground because he
that was a bit silly. That was a bit silly from Randall.
Yeah, but the point is, Sam, is this was a team who felt, and justified with some of the decisions they weren't getting, felt like everything was against them there yesterday. There was a moment where there were two free kicks inside the centre circle that Gavin Ward could have given. He didn't play an advantage for the first one. He just didn't downright give it, and then didn't even consider the second one.
I have to jump in because we've nearly, and I just remembered about a split second before I had a text coming through reminded me, forgot what was so almost, if he hadn't have been corrected, the biggest cock up of the lot.
I was literally about to mention.
Yeah, which was where JB commits a foul. There's a little bit of afters off the ball, bit of toing and throwing, and the clown beckons over Sissoko to book him. And it took JB to actually walk over and say, no, it was me, before he realised who it was who committed the foul. That's just amateurish. I don't think I've ever seen the like of that. I know there was an incident in the Premier League where I think somebody mistook Kieran Gibbs with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, but I've never seen an incident apart from that, certainly never in real life. And I think it just spoke to the amateurish way he was refereeing the game. He couldn't even realise which player was which when it came to a yellow card. It was a shocking moment, and Edwards was going ballistic at him for that. Quite right.
Then of course, as mentioned, we have the Isaka red card. Ben, I'll bring you in on this one. We're going to round up ref watch in a second because we're approaching 50 minutes, and Aaron did ask us to keep it within an hour. I'm not sure we're going to do that because we still got to preview Watford and get some questions in. Ben,
We laugh
just
at an
quickly
hour deadline.
we do. Quickly touch on the Asaka red card then, because
Yeah.
the still image that's going around on social media, I don't think portrays anywhere near the story of this incident.
No.
We'd already had a moment where the ball was bouncing towards their goalkeeper, and Asaka was quick. He was over enthusiastic. He lays his hands on the keeper. I think it's embarrassing from the QPR keeper, to be honest with you, the way he throws himself to the ground. And then you see this incident every day of the week, don't you, where players are running for these 50-50 balls. And look, Freddie is probably stupid to go in with his foot at that angle. Did Gavin Ward really have any other decision to make?
I mean, he could. I mean, you have to, Law 12 sort of tells the referees they have to consider things like speed, where it is on the pitch, etc., etc. So, and 14 gives them the discretion. As I was schooled last season, gives them the discretion to interpret that pretty broadly. So, I mean, he could, especially given that we were already down a man, showing his discretion, and giving him a yellow. But it's textbook endangering of an opponent. Because of the speed he's going, there's no malice. It's fractions of a second late, but the foot, as you say, the studs are up, and he catches him on the shin. And if he was a little bit later and his leg had come down, he could have caught him even higher than that. So you can't fault the ref. I would give that. I do think he could have maybe shown some leniency. And that again is another thing where he bottles the big decisions, but he's more than happy to like the Randall thing. I feel like the Randall thing. Yes, it was petulant. Yes, it was dissent, but it was borderline. It was on the cusp of could he have just shown a little bit of forbearance there? But no, he's quite happy to throw the cards around when it sort of seemed pernickety, to use or looking for a better word, but actually sort of missing the broader the broader interpretation of the laws, and it is dangerous. To the way he referees, it's dangerous. Referees, if they make bad decisions because they're mistaken, that's one thing. But as John said, and the Edmondson example last season, exactly the same, where it's either a card for diving or it's a red card for, and he just bottles it. He just doesn't have.
He gives neither. Exactly right.
And John was bang on that. Rotherham, he lost the game there for the very similar reason, or it's you, I believe, for very similar reasons, just indecisive, and it's dangerous. It's not just incompetent; it's dangerous. And he's the only referee really that I think I have that kind of worry with, where people can get hurt, and they did at Rotherham in the Rotherham game. So yeah, I feel like it's the cards were all those, or the reds rather, were justified. It's unfortunate for Freddie because there's no malice. He's slightly, if he gets a fraction second early, he gets that ball, and he'll learn maybe that, he's probably used to being the quickest one on the pitch and getting that, at the lower level, he's probably used to nicking that 9 times out of 10. And, the defenders are faster here. So it'll be a learning experience. And I think that, the managers felt the same way the fans did. It was just, unlucky, that one.
Just to quickly interject on that as well, as I've had it sent to me in a text message, as we're talking, there was he was so quick to get the red card out of his pocket, wasn't he? There was no thinking time, no going over to calm it down, no consultation with his assistant, which, funnily enough, he was keen to do regarding the penalty, but not when play had already stopped for the red card. So again, it's process rather than outcome. And the reason I'm maybe not going fully in on him as much as the rest of you guys are, is because I do think the 3 big outcomes of the game, all 3 he probably got correct, even if the process in which he got there was slightly dodgy. But yeah, you could tell the QPR defender wanted to have a little shove of Asaka, didn't he? And that looked like it might bubble over for a second. And to be fair to Gavin Ward, I think he did book the QPR player for giving Isaka a shove. So we'll give him some credit for that, because I guess that did de-escalate the situation a little. But yeah, there was no thinking time. He was sprinting towards the incident with his card in his pocket and got the red straight out, which wasn't great. On the Randall thing, yeah, look, I don't want to have my only mention of Adam Randall on this podcast to be a negative one, because I do think he had a good game. By and large, he put in an excellent ball for the Such penalty incident, which again, as I said, if Such had just kept his hands to himself, may have resulted in us winning a penalty from the Randall cross. So, Randall did do well, but I do think he's got a little bit of a emotional edge to his game where he reacts to stuff with a little bit of petulance. And I just think he needs to just sort of do the old proverbial shut your eyes and count, maybe not count the 10 because there's no time on the football pitch, but shut your eyes and count the 3 maybe. And just because I do think that one of these days he's going to get himself on a yellow like that and then get a second yellow. And we don't want that to happen.
I was only going to add on the Osaka red card. Sam touched on it, I guess, a little bit. Whatever you think of the decision, is that a bad enough tackle that it justifies their defenders scrumming around the kid and, you know, pushing and shoving and screaming in his face? No, disgusting behavior. Absolutely pathetic. And for their players, by the way, to behave like that, which they did on a few occasions yesterday when they've got the referee in their pocket and it's essentially 12 men versus 9 by the end is a joke. Obviously, I know that criticizing teams that changed their manager and stayed up last season and are destined for the Premier League next is banned on this podcast by edict of Twitter and Sam Down. But yeah, I did just want to say that. So
just tangentially as well. QPR fans are generally a decent bunch as Championship fan bases go. They're certainly a lot worse at the top of my list. But seeing some of the salt on Twitter and elsewhere from QPR fans having been restricted to draws twice against 10 and then 9 men in 2 seasons at home has been quite delicious. And I think as much as they were angry with the conduct of some of our players, I think that some of the QPR players need to have a look in the mirror, as John suggested.
Yeah, and I did enjoy the fellow with the sombrero in that corner near the away fans. He's been there, by the way, for over 20 years. I first went to QPR in 2002, and he was there then as well, wearing well, probably not the same sombrero, but wearing a sombrero all the way back then as he was now. So he's obviously a bit of a local character, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying the fine people from Loft for Words, which is the QPR preview, which we've collaborated with before this game, they DM'd the Argyle Life account saying we've never had a game like that where every single 50-50 decision's gone QPR's way. So I think even they could see what a good ride of it they were getting from the ref. So disappointing, but we move on.
Just to round off Ref Watch, just to give a little bit of balance like we did to Forshaw. As I said at the very start of this, I do think personally Gavin Ward did get the 3 major decisions in the game correct. That's not what I have a beef with. I have a beef with the other 90 odd minutes that preceded that. And I mean that gave me the biggest telling point of how little control the officials had of the game was that the 4 minutes of stoppage time was even alarmingly low. The trainer had been on a couple of times. There'd been a whole raft of substitutions, and yet you only get 4 minutes. I mean, it staggers me that, again, it goes back to a broader point that we'll have on another podcast, maybe in an international break, where football fans aren't actually getting their money's worth because we're not actually paying to see 90 minutes of football. We're only seeing about 50 minutes, but that's a totally different point of view. My last point, you mentioned there about QPR players. The one thing I would like to mention was there were a couple of incidents where Karamoku Dembele, who I think is a fabulous player, I think he really did shine yesterday and may well have been QPR's best. There were 3 or 4 occasions where he went down under very little contact trying to buy a free kick. And in particular, there was one incident in the penalty area where he threw himself to the ground and Gavin Ward just waved it away. That's a situation for me where Gavin Ward knows that he's gone down 2 or 3 times already with very little contact. Have a word with him. Just say to him, stop doing it. You're not going to get it. There's not any contact there. You're a fine player. Just carry on with what you're doing. But look, that's the first installment of Gavin Ward.
Follow the rules and book him.
Well, there is that. But it was only players in yellow, black and green that he wanted to book yesterday. So... Look, that's the first instalment of the Gavin Ward sponsored Ref Watch. I'm sure that the authorities will give us at least another volume at some point during the course of the season. We are now an hour in. There are 1,100 of you watching. We hope you enjoyed the first passionate version of Ref Watch. We've not had one like that for a little while. Funny enough, the last one was Rotherham. Let's take a few starred questions then before we excuse me, before we go on to the Watford preview. We'll keep these as briefly as we can, lads, if we can, because obviously we are coming up to that hour mark now, and we do have to squeeze in the Watford stuff. YouTube comment from P321Man1 says, looks like we may be signing an attacking mid from Sweden top flight Michael Babu. Anyone know anything about him? if you do want to know about him, head over to the Argyle Live Transfer Centre, because Adam has been very quick to put a report up there. If you do see that he's made 423 appearances this season, that is a little bit of a typo. So don't take that literally. It's not 423 appearances. Anyone want to take this one? Dr. Diat, whatever it is, on YouTube. Anyone know yet of the whereabouts of Saxon? This will probably tie into a question from Stevie Vaughan, I suspect. Which players do you think would depart the club this week, whether it's a loan or a permanent? My gut feeling is that Saxon might be going out to get some game time.
I can say with 100% certainty that Saxon was in Plymouth City Centre by the university last Sunday because I saw him. Otherwise, I don't know.
What about his capabilities or whether he's going to stay at the football club beyond Friday's deadline?
He's clearly not fancied.
It seems unlikely, doesn't it? Since he's not been in squads, etc. If he's not making squads, and you know, it seems very unlikely that he's going to be. You know, he needs time. He's just been injured quite severely, and as making his comeback, and then got a further injury, didn't he? Whilst at Wickham, so he needs playing time before Argyle can assess really what they're gonna do with him. So I imagine a loan suits everybody.
It's been a bit of an odd one in the sense that it's been almost like a. You know, I think the word maybe media blackout is a bit excessive, but there's been nothing on any internal or external media about him. Like normally, because not only did he not play has he not appeared in any squad this competitive season, he also didn't appear in the squad for the final 2 pre-season friendlies, which went a bit under the radar at the time. Normally, there's like a little, you know, short article from Chris Errington or something on the official site about such and such is going to be out for a few weeks with an injury or whatever. But there's been nothing, so that would suggest to me it's either, you know, maybe something in his life that the club are just keeping quiet for whatever reason. In which case, absolutely fair, we don't need to know about it. Or maybe he is just really, really out of favour, and if that's the case, then it's something that obviously the club are clearly trying to move him on. I think he's probably like in practice 4th choice left back now, behind obviously Mumba, who starts most games there, Galloway, who moved over there, and Better, who started at Hillsborough and came on. So. In reality, I just don't think he's going to get many minutes whatsoever, even if he is fit. Yeah, it's a weird one with him. I don't know what's going on. You kind of thought, in theory, given how well he played at Watford last season, and from the brief bits we have seen of him as an attacking player, he'd be quite suited to this new techie style of Rooney, where left backs get forward and join in with the attack, and sometimes they invert. You'd have thought that's exactly the kind of player you would like, but maybe Rooney has just taken a look at him and thought he's not quite championship level. So. I don't know. I get the feeling we're not going to see him play for us again, but maybe I'll be wrong.
I think just for clarity, I can't remember whether it was pre-Hull, post-Hull, or pre-QPR. Chris Errington did ask the question about Saxon early, and I'm fairly sure, I don't want to be quoted on this, but I seem to have it in the back of my mind that Wayne Rooney didn't quite name Saxon per se, but he did say obviously that players would have to go out to get game time. I think his words were roughly around the lines of, we need players to go out and get game time, but we want to keep them in the building, if you get what I mean. So they want to keep them for the long term, but for the short term they need game time, and that's perhaps where I see Saxon fitting in, whether or not it's going to be another loan spell out to a League One club possibly. But
I get that, but his contract is out at the end of this season. I think it's almost. I know he's still a very young player, but he's still only, even now, only like 21, I think, or maybe he's, you know, shortly turned 22. But I kind of feel it's going to be almost now or never for him, really, because he has been here now a full season and a half. And yes, you know, obviously last season mired by injuries, but obviously didn't really play much even in that half season of the title year. He had a couple of good games and good contributions, but didn't really play much in that half season of the title year, and obviously getting nowhere near the team this year. So yeah, there is the possibility we loan him out until January, and then maybe he comes back in January. Of course, the other factor that might complicate it when it comes to left-back options is Galloway looks to have injured himself again. Now, obviously, we hope it's not a severe one or a long-lasting one, but with Brendan Galloway, doesn't always have the best track record on the injury front. So maybe if Galloway is, you know, God forbid, going to be out until October, November, even beyond, might reconsider keeping Saxon early in the building.
Yeah, for sure. We've got 2 questions left starred, and then we'll come on to Watford preview. And thankfully, one of the questions will lead into the Watford preview. Ben, why don't you take this one? It's from FPL is Life. Not for me at the moment, because I seem to be the only person in the country who didn't play Haaland or triple captain him this weekend. Do we have any idea how Rooney is trying to solve the Azaz problem before the red card? Who was our go-to ball carrier? For me, with his cameo when he came on, I know he ended up playing through the middle, but I'd be quite happy having Obafemi playing behind Ryan Hardy with the way he managed to control the ball at his feet.
Yeah, it's a weird one because Obafemi has always been an off the shoulder, in a sense, kind of like a Ryan Hardy style of forward in many ways, a bit more dynamic perhaps, and he obviously replaced Hardy on Saturday, but he's not been, he started at Southampton, he's played in the Premier League, and he seems to have slowly sort of made his way down the leagues, as it were, in that position. And it might well be, you're right, that Wayne Rooney said to him, as he sort of spoke to Tijani and Sissoko, and he spoke to him and said, look, I think you have, as someone who would very much know what it takes to be a good number 10, I feel like you have the assets, the qualities to be a good number 10. Come down to Plymouth. I know it's inverted comma step down for you, but I can mold you into that really good number 10. So although I didn't think he was necessarily coming here to do that, I had my doubts about it. It could be that that's the case. However, we've just been linked tonight with another attacking midfielder who he sort of fits that bill. I don't know much about him, but clearly that is his position and his role. Would I love us to go and see if Borough would think about sending us Azaz maybe in January, if not now? Love us to, but I don't think they're gonna, they'll want to see a return on their investment, and they're not going to give up on it that easily. So it definitely seems like we're looking to bring in someone to fill that Azaz hole that we still have. Because, we were discussing, and I'll be very brief here, we were discussing, weren't we, in the group chat, are we stronger than the start of last season? And basically, in most positions, yes, other than that obvious hole, that Azaz-shaped hole in the creative position up front. So it does need addressing, and it looks like the club are trying to do that.
For sure. Although don't burst our bubble that maybe Azaz isn't going to come back. Although Rory Drake's just telling us that the local paper said Azaz played his best game for Borough yesterday. So there you go. Maybe someone's letting off fireworks. Who'd have thought that at this time of year? Right, let's crack on then with the question about Tuesday night.
So it's Gavin Ward. He's found you.
It's Gavin. Yeah, he's yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll quite happily go out there and see him with a firework. I'm only joking. Right, let's talk about Tuesday night then. John, you can have first go at this. Another trip to the capital city. Vicarage Road lies in waiting on Tuesday night against Watford.
Don't think Watford's the capital city, mate. I think you might have to.
No, but Watford is in London.
If it's inside the M25, it's part of London. Grow up, you Londoner.
Exactly.
Literally.
Quite right. Take away your southeast prejudices against us West Country folk. Watford is inside the M25, therefore it qualifies as being a part of London. We're going back to the capital on Tuesday night. We know by the sounds of it from Wayne Rooney's post-match yesterday that Dan Grimshaw is going to start this game, which, as I said to you guys this morning, hopefully will present him with a good headache for Saturday. What sort of other makeup are you expecting in the side? Because this could be quite interesting how we shape up, I think.
Yeah, I think it depends on incomings and outgoings a little bit. There are a few who I would expect to start, like, for instance, Carabao Cup one-man goal machine, Ben Wayne, who looks to be on his way out the door, probably on loan, I'm thinking.
I was going to say, could we be using it to get people like Ben Wayne, maybe somebody like a Matty Soranola, like put them in the shop window with a couple of days to go sort of situation here?
Am I right in thinking that Wayne wasn't in the squad yesterday? I can't remember looking at the subs, which strongly suggests that he's off. I think he would have been in the squad if not, probably, or I guess maybe Obafemi came in for him. But Yeah, I heard a rumor that Wayne was off to a London club, and then Sam said Gillingham. Although apparently there's no contradiction in that because of how we're defining London as the entire southeast these days. On this pod,
Gillingham does not have a tube stop. Just point of order.
Well, Matt Robinson says Watford's never London, but Rory Drake points out that it's got 2 underground stops, John. Therefore, it's part of London,
Mark
isn't
is
it?
right. Mark is right. Rory is wrong.
Watford is the start of the north, isn't it? Like Watford is where
Yes.
the north starts. You've kind of got London, and then everything from Watford up is
No,
the north.
The north starts at Ensley Garden Centre, Ben. You should know that by now. Anyway, back to Tuesday night, please.
Anyway, so I think it depends a little bit on, in terms of rotation, like how many of these more fringe players in our squad are on the way out the door on loans or permanents, as to whether they start or not. So I think we might see maybe some names on the team sheet who are more like championship starters for us, who have to come in and play because of this kind of merry-go-round factor. Otherwise, I guess I'd expect to see sort of a similar team to the one that played against Cheltenham in round 1, maybe with a couple of I could see maybe like Sissoko or Whittaker starting. I mean, it's possible both will. It's possible also, that Rooney will look at it and think Watford have had a brilliant start to the season in the Championship. This is not League Two opposition. It would be psychologically damaging for us to go there and take a 4-0, 5-0 defeat if we put out, a second string. So I'm going to treat this as if it's a league game and go full strength, with the exception of rotating the keepers. But I think obviously there's certainly a case to be made that Grimshaw will be our first choice keeper in the league anyway pretty soon. Obviously, I would strongly expect Hazard to start on Saturday after how we played this weekend. But Grimshaw for Hazard isn't exactly like a number 2 keeper coming in for a number 1. It's a bit of a different situation to that. So, it might be like a little bit of rotation, but still a kind of league strength side, or it might be a sort of more second string 11. I think it depends on, again, factors like who's incoming and outgoing, who maybe has got a little bit of a knock whereby maybe we risk it for a league game but won't for the cup. That kind of thing. Obviously, it's Rooney. Obviously, we're not totally familiar with what he does in cup competitions with us, because he's only had 1 game in a cup competition against a vastly different standard of opposition. So, so I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily want to predict it with too much certainty. Do we know if Obafemi is cup tied? Is he allowed to play for us in the cup? What's the deal with that? Does anyone know?
Not sure. I suppose we'll find out probably tomorrow in the press conference, wouldn't we?
Very good question. I don't think he played for them in their first round.
Did Burnley actually play in the first round?
Well, it seems so. They're a league side, aren't they? They're in our league there.
I thought a couple of teams sat it out. Luton sat it out, and I thought maybe Burnley.
Oh, some teams get buys. Yes, it has to be an even number. No, I think you're right, because it has to be an even number. Yeah, and it obviously then when the Premier League come in, it has to be divisible to 2. So no, I think you're right. So okay, so he's certainly not cup tied in the sense that he's played for them. He might be restricted by Burnley from playing for us, but I don't think so. And I think from their point of view, the benefits of playing him are more so than the risks, because he'll get regular minutes. And let's be honest, they can only recall him in January, at which point it's semi-finals already. So there's no benefit to them in keeping Obafemi just in case they make the semi-finals and they need to play him in that if they recall him. So I think he'll be allowed to play.
In all fairness, they played against a very impressive Sunderland side yesterday and got humbled, particularly in the first half. So at the moment, it's all
our good friend Gab Sutton predicted them to win the league, and a lot of people were laughing at him. And I'm not sure they're laughing now after the start Sunderland have made. So
yeah, and Preston were top with 3 wins out of 3 this time last year. Look what happened to them.
Very true. Very true.
Very early days. I think.
Ben,
also,
John, just round off your thoughts on Watford then.
Yeah, I was going to say just quickly. Scott Parker maybe showing his true colours a little bit after an impressive start. No, I think yes, I think Obafemi will certainly play. If he's not cup tied, that would be one where I'd be very confident he'll come in. Yeah, I think that's what I'd expect team wise. In terms of the result, who knows? Again, they've started really, really well. I think not the top 20 podcasters predicted them to finish bottom of the championship, and yet they started with 3 wins out of 3. So I guess it's a little bit hard to know their true level at the moment. But we've seen teams again, Preston being an example from last season, start brilliantly and then just absolutely fall off a cliff. I wouldn't necessarily put too much stock in how good either them or Sunderland look so far. Obviously, game for game, brilliant, well done them. I'm sure their fans are delighted, but I don't necessarily think it means that the Watford, for example, are world beaters just yet. I don't think we can quite conclude that just yet. But obviously, yeah, they're in form. Cup, obviously, league form can go out the window a little bit, but I'm expecting it to be a tough game. I predicted for the Watford program notes we were asked to submit a prediction. I said it would be 1-1 and that we'd win on penalties. Just got a little bit of a feeling about it, and I think Sam also has said privately that it would be very us for our first kind of win against Championship opposition under Rooney's come in a cup game, kind of muddying the narrative about how well the Rooney era is going for a little bit longer. So I'll be optimistic and say we'll win. But in all honesty, I'm not that bothered about the result. Don't really care about the Carabao Cup at all. For me, it's an opportunity to go and enjoy a new ground in the capital city.
Exactly right. Anything that John hasn't covered there about our trip to London that you boys want to add?
I'm going to be I'm going to be a real pain here, and Aaron is going to be looking back at this and sticking a pin in a voodoo doll of me. But if we're not doing a Watford preview, should we not say something about Stoke and the return of Schumacher? Just putting that out there.
Well,
no, because we'll have the scouting report, surely.
My second.
True.
My first point was going to be, I suspect Watford, after a brilliant start, might play the B team, and Rooney, obviously bedding in, might decide to sort of try and keep some momentum, and it might be a much closer game than I think we, like John suggests, we might end up between the predicament of who we might have going out and things being sorted, need to play a strong team, and Rooney might be inclined to try and get some to keep that cohesion going, keep the combinations and the connections improving. And I think, like, cleverly might think, let's ride the league success, put out the B team, and keep everyone fresh for the league. He also, though, might decide to try and keep the same team in to sort of keep the consistency going. But yeah, I'd like to see us to win. But frankly, I don't care about the Watford game because I'm really concerned about Stoke. Not concerned in the sense that I think that they're dangerous, but we really need to get the first win ASAP. We've talked about how results are improving, and we need to stay in touch and distance to the pack. I think from the start of the season. So a win on Saturday is all I really care about. I'm quite happy to go and get hammered by Watford. I'm quite happy to go and can we have a sing along to the scouting report theme tune? Paul backs out. Not unless under sort of threat of severe pain or injury. So I honestly, I think sometimes EFL games are important or can be useful, but I think given the context of where we are in the development of this team and Rooney's tenure, I do think it's one of those where it genuinely doesn't matter. If we get the result, then maybe the next round is useful for many other things, but with Stoke on the horizon, they're not in brilliant form. I think that the Saturday really takes all the attention.
Right, let's rattle around some score predictions then. Obviously, we're keeping this to an hour, and we've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. But we do
have a piece of any other business, don't we, Joe?
We do. We do.
Have a piece of any other business.
If you let me keep to my running order, Sam, jumping in for the second week in a row. I was just about to thank the 1,268 people who are currently joining us live, Sam, if you don't mind.
It doesn't do that to Aaron.
No, he doesn't. I've noticed that. He's scared of Aaron. That's what we're going to do next. So let's go around the predictions then. Ben first. Argyle, Watford, Tuesday night.
Let's go for a 2-2.
2-2. Who wins it on penalties?
Watford.
Sam.
1-1 at full time, 2-2 after extra time. Argyle win on penalty.
There's no extra time, is there?
Oh,
straight to pens.
That's peed on my chips, hasn't it? 1-1 at full time. Argyle win on penalties.
And John?
I already said 1-1. Argyle on penalties. So Sam stole my prediction. To be clear, I said it first.
I was listening, honestly. I sadly think this might be a 3-1 defeat, and we can concentrate on the league for a few months, which could actually be to our benefit. Just to let you know as well, Andy Davies, not of Twitter fame, Plymouth Argyle Twitter fame, that is, Andy Davies of Hampshire will be refereeing. So it's probably a good job we don't have a ref watch, because he's another one who's in my book. But that's something to look forward to. If you do want to catch the game and you're not going to Vicarage Road, which is inside the M25 on Tuesday night, you can catch it on Sky Sports Plus with all the other Carabao Cup ties. I'm not working for Sky. I'm not promoting them. I'm just telling you how you can watch it. Right. Any other business?
Yeah, if no one else has, I'd like to just flag up.
Ever hold your peace, given we're 22 minutes overtime?
Just that I know Finn tweeted about it and didn't get a response, but it was really nice to hear Andrew Parkinson at the fan forum say that he'd become aware of the issue that we raised back along with the removal of free travel for the personal assistance for the disabled on transport, and intimated that there would be a quick response, a quick reevaluation. Now, I don't know if that meant the reevaluation was going to lead to that decision being altered or not, but I haven't heard anything, and I've been trying to find anybody who has travelled, because since then the QPR tickets, travel tickets have all come out, etc. And those that I have spoken to, those disabled supporters who use PAs who I have spoken to or have heard second-hand reports of, found other alternative methods of transport didn't go via the club provision. So I don't know if there was any change there, but I certainly haven't heard anything from the club. I would just, if anybody who is viewing of the nearly 1,300 know anything about, if they've heard something that I've missed, or if they have personal experience, could pass that on, because otherwise it seems it's been a good number of weeks. How many weeks has it been now since the fan forum? It
was the first of August, so we're into the fourth week.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I don't want to accuse them of not having done anything, having said yes, I've just become aware of it, and I will address that if they have addressed it, and I'm just ignorant of it. But so if you know anything, please let me know, or someone on the pod know, or put it on Twitter and at me, or at the at Argyle Life, so that we can know, because otherwise it seems a bit strange that I don't know how long it takes to sort of take a decision on that. I can't imagine it takes 4 weeks. So maybe I've missed something. But yes, that was my any other business. Thank you.
Yeah, and as somebody who attended the fans forum, I just want to, I don't know whether the gentleman will be watching or whether somebody who knows the gentleman will be watching. The gentleman who articulated the question to Andrew Parkinson, it was obviously something he was quite passionate about, and I thought he really put the question across brilliantly. And as you say, Andrew did say it was something he was made aware of, and he was going to look into it. I think his words were there'd be some news coming out in a couple of days. So maybe, as you say, maybe it's just been lost in all the other stuff that's been going on and we haven't seen it. But yeah, if anyone watching does know, do get in contact, just because obviously we always want to try and find out the best news possible for the fans. On that point, Harold Mersland asks, do you ship to Norway from your shop? We have asked Aaron the question, Harold, and once we get an answer, I will probably get Aaron to tell you on next week's podcast.
I think those bevs that you mentioned earlier might have caught up with him, because he's not responded.
Yeah, I think his little jaunts up and down the country at the moment, because I don't know if he's ever mentioned he does live in Norwich, so everywhere is quite far. But that's not inside the N25, so that's not in London. But he does have to travel long distances.
Sam would just like to ask in exchange if Norway ships managers to Plymouth.
Very good. That's of course due to Sam's interest in the manager market whilst we were looking to appoint Wayne Rooney. Anything else from anybody, or are we all good? I think we're all good. I've got no AOBs. So just to let you know what's coming up this week, obviously Tuesday night we're in action against Watford. If you have missed tonight's episode, you haven't watched live, it will be out tomorrow on YouTube and Twitter and wherever else you get your fix of the Green and White podcast. As we mentioned, there will be no post-match review from Tuesday night, not unless something dramatic happens and we put one on off the cuff, because we have a My Argyle Life coming out on Wednesday. So do stay tuned for the latest installment of that one. And then we will be, well, I won't be back. I'm actually away having a weekend off, having just hosted for 2 weeks. The boys will be back next weekend to talk about the Stoke City game and, of course, the return of Steven Schumacher down to Home Park, which I'm sure will be a very interesting affair. So, if that's everything, gents, we shall bid everyone a good night. 1,315 of you have joined us this evening. We thank you as ever for you giving up your Sunday nights to join us. If you do now want to get back to your episode of Midsummer Murders that you've got paused, do carry on. But from all of us at Green and White Podcast, we will see you again next week. Oh, last but not least, tomorrow night, I'm just going to give a shameless plug. Tomorrow night, I am on with Gab Sutton on the EFL debate. So do catch that via his channels. So, gents, as always, thank you very much for your company, and we will see you all again in the week.